Cancel culture on a whole new ridiculous level. As I like to say, if I were a professional YouTuber, this is where I'd play my cool little intro theme song at this point and have that go on before we get into things. But I'm not professional. I'm a professional writer, and you can check out my works if you like science fiction, fantasy, steampunk, comics. I've got everything, a little of something for you. Go to my newsletter in the description below, and you can sign up and get a free novel, a free novella, and a free graphic novel just for being around. Lets me update you on new releases and things like that. A lot of cool stuff coming out this year. I think you're going to find that in 2021. I'm going to be putting out stuff that is just going to blow your mind. So hope you'll be along for the ride. I really appreciate all the readers, especially. You guys are the ones who keep us going, and that's what supports the channel the best. All right. Let's dig into this. This is a story that a lot of people aren't going to cover, and I'm paying attention to it just because I pay attention to sort of the sad things that happen in culture, and I like to promote things that are of good substance, that are kind of pushing towards the culture that I want to be. And N3F Zines is actually one of those groups that is on that level. They just put out a newsletter PDF, basically. I think it's once a month. They put out science fiction reviews. They talk about things going on in science fiction culture. They are truly not political. They'll post something about something I wrote, or they'll post something about something John Scalzi wrote. Whatever is news in science fiction, they truly stick to what they're supposed to do. And the fanzine sort of scene has died, of course, because of the internet on a lot of levels. But it used to be a place where just people could gather and talk about topics that they liked, enjoy stuff together, have fun together. It sounds like a lot of culture. We're just not allowing that anymore because social media must make us cancel everything. And that's what's happening here. I guess there's this e-fanzine aggregator for people to be able to find these fanzines, which is a nice service in theory. But they want to play gatekeeper with who's going to be allowed into this. Now, this N3F magazine has, which stands for National Fantasy Fan Federation, has been around for a long time. I'm going to put this link in my description below just so you can check it out. Also, support them, read their stuff. It's a free blog and a free PDF periodically, and of course, they just take donations on that front. But to try to drop them from a website that aggregates actual content that you're supposed to be promoting. I mean, if you're a fanzine and this is a fanzine, you should be putting it up on your website. It just makes sense. It's kind of crazy. And it's not because they said anything or because they, went over the line into politics or whatever. They're very clear that N3F does not go into politics whatsoever, ever. They just did it because they promoted on two different websites. So they had the gall to go on two websites to be like, hey, we're a fantasy magazine. Why don't you check us out and see if you would like to read fantasy? Well, he goes really, the guy who runs this e-fanzine site went really crazy about this to George Phillies, which I hope I pronounced his name right, who is the purveyor of this magazine. George, I assume you're not aware that Parler and Gab are sites frequented by those who planned and executed the recent attempted insurrection of the Capitol. I mean, let's talk about hyperbole and fantasy there real quick. We had a bunch of boomers kind of walk into the Capitol in protest, and it was blown out of proportion by the media, but that's another story entirely. Moreover, most of it was planned on Facebook, is what they determined at the end of the day. Oops. Which resulted in the deaths, 5 deaths, and included links to Wikipedia articles about Parler and Gab, which explained their popularity with Donald Trump supporters, conservatives, conspiracy theorists, and right-wing extremists, including, of course, wait for it, everybody, because it always goes here, neo-Nazis and the alt-right. Of course, this guy's obviously extremely deranged and not paying attention to what he's supposed to be with his site at all. And that makes him the extremist. If your site is supposed to be promoting fanzines and somebody's actually putting out a fanzine about fantasy, gatekeeping because you watched, in fact, it's stalking. You stalked this George Phillies guy onto some other website, which, if he was so outraged about it, why is he reading Gab and Parler to know that his account was there promoting this fanzine? Think about that. He was stalking him, is what it comes down to, because he's mentally deranged. And that's what's happening here. This is done a lot by the psyops of the corporate media, and it's done intentionally. They want you only talking about corporate products, only paying attention to certain corporate things. The fact that N3F would talk about my books actually makes them a threat more than them being on Gab or Parler as it is, because my books are just supposed to be unseen and unpersoned and deplatformed, right? And since he's a actual purveyor of science fiction and fantasy who would refuse to do something like this, that's really the crime that the thought crime that George has committed here, according to this guy. It's really insidious because what they want is they want to gatekeep all the information about anything out there. So that way that only Tor books get promoted or only Disney products get promoted. And it's a form of gatekeeping used so that people are not made aware of other properties or other new culture. It really is a bad thing for artistry. It's a bad thing for innovation. And it keeps the populace focused on these brands. And this guy isn't doing this because he understands that. In fact, it's very clear that he doesn't understand that based on the crazy buzzwords he's using. But this is the end result of what happens. Now, it's silly to do this in a fanzine capacity because gatekeeping fanzine information is a really small niche market as it is, and who cares at this juncture? But it's sad because George Phillies obviously is a good person. He just wants to logically talk about things. And he says, whatever your political inclinations, I am mostly not interested in politics these days. These people who use each of the sites I listed are also science fiction fans. If they have been banned from other sites, well, that makes it difficult to reach them using those other sites. A very good point. Anybody who wants to sell their science fiction should be trying to sell their science fiction everywhere. People always tell me, I get some complaints on the opposite end saying, like, why are you using Kickstarter? Or why are you using Amazon? Or why are you using Twitter? And I'm like, well, I want to reach the biggest audience possible. I want people to be able to read my works. And especially if people are neutral or don't agree with me, if they read my works and are influenced by it, that grows our cause on every level. It also, of course, grows book sales, which is the most important part here, and grows the amount of people who would read this fanzine in this entrance. So they go on, and it's a back and forth on Facebook. But at the end of the day, this guy who is Bill Burns just wanted to cancel this group because he doesn't want them to be able to talk about books that are books that people, quote, shouldn't read. It's a digital book burning at its finest. And it's really sad that a fanzine site would stoop to this level. Oh, well. All right. Like I said, I'm going to put the link to the description below for the National Fantasy Fan Federation. I am on their email list. I read them and check out their stuff. You get a variety of information, and it's good to get a variety of information, not just be trapped in a bubble where it's just your side, because you'll have no idea what the other side's saying. You'll never come up with ideas outside of a little small pool. It's important to have a breadth of knowledge. It really is. So check it out if this is your sort of deal. I like fanzines, and I think that this is a good site for the future. All right. Hit that like and subscribe button. Thanks for all being there, everybody. We will be back